Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me. I need to start the recording. My apologies. Very, very sorry for all this. Hello and welcome to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Decentralized Wastewater webcast series. Today's session is titled How State and Local Government Promote and Proclaim SepticSmart Week. My name is Kevin O'Donovan. I am an EPA contractor, and I will be handling the technical aspects of today's session. We will get started in a few moments. While we wait for others to log on, I will cover a few housekeeping items. By now, you should have the GoToWebinar application running and should see the welcome slide on your screen. If you are having technical difficulties using GoToWebinar, please visit gotowebinar.com and click on Support in the upper right corner of the page. You also may submit a question via the GoToWebinar Questions panel, and I will try and help you resolve your issue. We encourage you to ask questions at any time during the webinar. Simply use the GoToWebinar control panel. You can type your questions in the area that says Questions and then click Send to submit it to the moderator. Please note that your GoToWebinar control panel may not be expanded and may look like a small gray rectangle with little buttons. You will need to expand it so that you can ask questions. To do so, just click on the orange button at the top of the gray rectangle. With that bit of housekeeping out of the way, we are ready to start the webinar. I now will turn things over to Zach Lowenstein of the EPA. Zach?
Thanks, Kevin. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zach Lowenstein, and I work in EPA's Office of Wastewater Management in the Decentralized Wastewater Program. As part of our Decentralized Wastewater MOU Partnership, we're pleased to host this webinar. As many of you might know, SepticSmart Week is geared towards bringing awareness to homeowners on the proper care and maintenance of septic systems through education and outreach. We encourage state and local governments to further promote SepticSmart Week through issuance of proclamations. Our presenters today will go through their SepticSmart Week initiatives and outline how they went about getting a proclamation, whether from the governor, mayor, or locality. Our speakers are Jeremy Simmons, manager of the wastewater management section with the State of Washington Department of Health, Gene McCabe, with the Wastewater Engineering Support and Plan Review Section Manager for the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, and Susan Myhalo with the Town of Ogden Dunes. She's the chair of the Ogden Dunes Environmental Advisory Board. We will hold all questions until the end. You can type in your questions in the box on your screen. If you have a question for a specific presenter, please make sure to specify which presenter you have a question for. I will read the questions and direct them to the appropriate presenter at the end of the presentations. Thank you again for attending, and with that, we will start with Jeremy Simmons.
Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm Jeremy Simmons with the Washington State Department of Health. I run the wastewater management section. So I'm having a little bit of difficulty in making sure that my screen is showing. It looks like it's working. Okay. So hopefully everybody can see my first slide here, and I will move into the presentation. Sorry for that. So this is an org chart of our division, and there's a lot going on here. Don't try to read all the names or whatever, but I am the manager of this section here, the wastewater management section, and we have about 15 people, 15 staff, including engineers, hydrogeologists, health service consultants, admin folks, and we basically have 3 programs. I think a lot of states are familiar with the sort of break of small systems, small septic systems, and large septic systems. At the state, we basically regulate everything over 3,500 gallons a day up to 100,000 gallons a day, and then it bumps up to sort of a municipal plant. Smaller than 3,500 is regulated by the counties, and that's our small on-site sewage system program. So we have the large on-site sewage system program, the small on-site program, and then we also have reclaimed water program, which is sort of in its development stages. We're still trying to figure out how to get into reclaimed water business more, but we do a little bit there. Mostly working on role development right now. So jumping into SepticSmart, in 2015 is kind of where we got started on this, and you know, we did basically a light approach. We got a governor's proclamation. We made up flyers based on EPA documents. I'll show you some of that here in a minute. And we did social media posts. It was pretty small. So here's the governor's proclamation from 2015. I'm happy to send this out to whoever, or you could probably find it on our websites pretty easily. And basically, we found that the Office of Drinking Water here in Washington had gotten proclamations for Drinking Water Week and similar things at several times. And so we asked them what their process was, and we basically followed it. I'll show you that process here in a minute. And then it seemed like counties really liked the proclamation. They used it as a central point in news releases, events, social media posts, and so forth. They've been really, really happy to have these proclamations. So here's the material we developed in 2015. These are basically, I think everybody recognizes Sam there. But we changed some of the wording around in the base EPA documents. We just kind of broke it open with Adobe Illustrator and started changing stuff. And so we felt like this was a lot more, it really spoke to our audience a lot better, and our local health folks really liked, you know, this type of stuff, talking about Washington rather than a national standard, talking about how many septic systems we have in Washington and so forth. But this was pretty basic. Again, all we did was change the words. And then we put these up around our health, around the health department's campus, and just basically left them up for a week and generated some discussion, but you know, it wasn't very far reaching. And then we had given them to our county partners a few weeks out before SepticSmart. What we learned there was that the counties want it as soon as they can get it. I mean, if we could give it to them now, they'd be happy to have it because they want to plan. And so we learned from that a few weeks really isn't enough time. So yeah, we did tons of social media posts on Facebook and Twitter and so forth. And the counties out there took our tweets and posts and retweeted and reposted. So then moving on to 2016, we kind of upped our game a little bit. We had some federal dollars we had access to, and so we did the governor's proclamation again, and then we also took the EPA materials and sort of geared them up for outdoor advertising, outdoor spots, placements, and so forth. And of course, we did social again. So the 2016 proclamation is basically identical. You know, once you get this down, it's kind of cool to just use the format, and it kind of smooths the process a little bit. But so again, the proclamation went out. Counties used it. They put it up on their websites. They put out social posts. A few folks had events. One county even had a life-size cutout septic Sam that they had at their events with them, which was kind of cool. And then, you know, I don't have any hard data to share, but counties reported that they saw modest to good increases in their calls for inspections and service calls, which was good. It's tough to give much evidence on what the actual results were, but we do have anecdotal. And you know, I guess the other thing to say is that when locals put out their social media posts, the governor's proclamation is often a central theme. They either mention it, or it's kind of the starting point, or it's the sort of the whole focus. So after a couple years, we've kind of got it going on, and it's kind of easy for us now. What I was saying there is in 2017 now the proclamation process is fairly smoothed out because of these last 2 years. So going through 2016 still, we took the EPA materials and we made bus ads, billboard ads, and some mailers that go out in a coupon pack. And we worked with some counties to customize messaging for their communities in places where we were putting up bus ads and billboard ads. Some of the counties really wanted to help us out with that, and others basically just left us to develop it ourselves, which was fine. So here's some of our bus ads. You can see it's kind of the typical EPA stuff, but we've changed the words a little bit, and we kind of had a good time with coming up with lots of different versions and messages, and trying to see which ones the counties liked and which ones kind of fit better for a bus or a billboard and so forth. So we ran ads, bus ads around Seattle, Tacoma, and Olympia through September, from September through December, basically. Not all of those months where there are a bunch of buses out, but kind of hit and miss here and there. And what's interesting about when you run bus ads is a lot of times they stay on the buses for a while after you paid for them because they don't have another advertiser to kind of take the place. So it turned out to be 42 ads, and that cost us about $10,000. We did billboards around sort of the rural urban interface areas around Seattle, Tacoma, and Spokane. We did 10 billboards for about $10,000. And these are some of the ones that were more specialized for, the ones that you see here is specialized for specific counties. You can see the one on the left there has actually got Tacoma Pierce's logo on it, and they helped us a lot with developing the message there. So I don't know if any of you folks out there have Valpak mailers, but here in Washington we get this sort of monthly coupon mailer service sent out to folks, and it's the folks to come clean your drains or clean your gutters or tree cutting services and so forth, and we just popped this in there and it worked really well. It was kind of tough to format this from this is again from the EPA materials. It was a little tough to format this for this size and so forth, but once we got it there, I think it actually is kind of cool. It kind of has more information. We could slow down and do it at a different pace than an outdoor advertising. You only have a few seconds in outdoor advertising. Here we could kind of be more nuanced and get down into the details a little bit more. Of course, we did a bunch of social media posts again, and that was good. Again, counties liked it and retweeted it. So here's what we're probably more interested in hearing about, maybe. So I'll slow down a bit here and sort of let you look at this, but basically the idea is, you of course get approval to start the process, or star the process, and in the case of what I say there, you should start the process, get approval to do that, and then you basically the trick was to draft everything, get the proclamation drafted, we write the emails for our head of our agency up to the Secretary of Health, and then the email for the Secretary of Health to the Governor's office. We have all those emails ready and pre-written and send them in the email that in our original request. So that's what piece 5 is there, or number 5. We get our agency to send that email up to the Secretary of Health, and then hopefully that moves on to the Governor's office. And then in August, if it still hasn't happened, or maybe before, if you're kind of ahead of the game on this schedule, then maybe you follow up with some emails, calls. What we found is that the Governor's staff, the Governor's office staff, are super helpful, and they're used to dealing with these proclamations. If you call them, ask them what's going on, they'll tell you if they've received it or not. You can kind of chase it down that way, or if it's there but they have some concerns, or it's in review, at least you can kind of figure out what's going on. And I would recommend that you follow up every week or so to figure out where it is and if they need anything from you once the time's getting a little closer. And so yeah, it's basically, it all happens from June through August, basically June through July, really. We're starting a little earlier this year. I've already sent out all of the drafts of the emails and the draft proclamation. Sent that out yesterday, actually. So some tips here to sort of help you along the way, maybe. Really, you really want to make these emails short and to the point. Sort of call out what's important about this, why is it a good thing, and talk about how the locals will use it. I mean, almost always the governors happy to help out the counties, it seems like, and if so, if this is a good thing for the counties, then it's probably easy for them to get behind it. The other thing is, always make the proclamation in Word and don't format it. Don't mess with all the formatting that they do when it looks like a proclamation. The governor's office or someone else will do that. And then, the other thing is, once you have this together, the governor's office is kind of expecting it. And so, 2015, they had to review it for a while. 2016, they just kind of said, it sounds like it's good, and it was the same as last year, and so we're good with it. And that's basically it for me. And we're going to do questions at the end. So I will yield the floor now.
Thanks, Jeremy. Our next speaker is Gene McCabe with the state of Alaska.
All right. Let me get my screen up here. And hopefully now everybody's seeing my slide. I just lost my preview screen. Okay. Again, I'm Gene McCabe. I work at the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation as the Wastewater Engineering Support Plan Review Section Manager. I will click here. Just some Alaska quick facts. We have about 740,000 people, which averages to about 1 person per square mile if you told everybody to spread out. The problem is we don't spread out very well. Half of us live in one city in Anchorage. About 360,000 or so people living here in the municipality of Anchorage. We have a total of 34,000 miles of marine coastline and 20,200 square miles of inland water, so it's a pretty wet state. About 33% of our population, not our homes, but 33% of our population is served by on-site systems. That's a little bit on the higher end of the national spectrum, but not dramatically so. One of the challenges is that we have a lot of coastline, and a lot of people live on the coastline, but coastal Alaska is largely not suitable for on-site system, usually due to a combination of the fact that there's not suitable soils or they have high groundwater, or both. Normally the islands where you see a lot of development on the coastline basically is just a rock. You can blast out a hole and fill it full of shot rock, but that's about the best you can do, and it doesn't typically work real well. One of the things Alaska does have, which is an interesting reason why we participate in SepticSmart, is that we have cold ground and cold groundwater and cold weather. We did a few studies and we found out, and read a few studies, and we found out that what happens is with the cold weather is we actually get a really clear effluent, but digestion in the tank is pretty slow. So our recommendation, the state recommends having tanks pumped every other year because of that slow digestion. But we do get good effluent. We don't get clogging in the drain fields. It's just that we don't get good digestion. So it's a kind of a good with the bad. So in the Division of Water, which is a division of the Department of Environmental Conservation, our mission is to improve and protect water quality. These hows, the bold ones, are how our section helps. We establish the standards for water cleanliness by establishing technical and regulatory standards for on-site systems. And we also regulate the discharges to waters and wetlands by doing engineering plan approvals of systems. In certain categories, we have certain prescriptive categories that don't need engineering plan review, and then we have engineered systems, which we do the reviews on. And this is the staff that does that for the entire state of Alaska. If you were to spread the state out equally, each one of these review engineers has a landmass the size of the United Kingdom. But as you can see from the map here, it's not done equally, but we try to have each section have about the same amount of population. So we have 5 offices in Anchorage, Fairbanks, Juneau, Soldotna, and Wasilla. And each office generally has 2 people. A couple of the offices have 1 person, an engineer, and then someone that could help, an administrative assistant that could help out. But each one of these folks is a review engineer and then a person that helps them out. And I manage that program statewide from the Anchorage location. So like Jeremy, our participation started in 2015 too. We started about 1 month out the first year in 2015, and quite honestly, it never left the division. No one was quite sure what to do with a proclamation, and by the time we kind of figured out what was going on and what happened and how we would go about doing this, it got to be too late, and we just couldn't get out there. So lesson learned from 2015 was start earlier in 2016. So we did. We started coordinating our proclamation about 3 months out. The hard part is we found out that once we got out of the division, and the division said this was a good idea, that the department didn't really have a process for how to get proclamation submittals to the governor's office. So we worked with our media relations person from the department. We actually got our commissioner to put in an email, hey, I like this idea in general, this looks good, let's do it. And then my staff and I worked directly with someone we kind of knew in the governor's office, and they said they'd help us out. And about a month and a half out, we got the approval from the department, kind of compiled everything. We did exactly what Jeremy said. We actually, wrote the proclamation exactly how we'd like to see it, less the formatting, and just made it easy for the staff to just cut and paste that on their proclamation form, insert the date for signature, and it was pretty much, ready to deliver for them. The problem is when we submitted it to the governor's office, we got a kind of disheartening response of, well, we're really busy. We don't know if we're going to get to it. It actually looked like it was going to die for a long time. We kept up our personal relationships with the staffers and just checked in with them, like kind of similar to what Jeremy was saying, and checked in and said, what can we do to help? Is there anything we can do to increase our chances? They said, well, thank you, and we'll see what we can do. And kind of just when it looked like it was going to be a failure for 2016, we got an email that said, has your commissioner approved this? Absolutely. Send them a copy of the email, and they said, great, there you go. A couple days later, it was signed, and we got it signed and out on the streets about 6 days before SepticSmart 2016 kicked off. So I would echo, if you want to do a proclamation, you really have to ride that process the entire time, because it's just not going to, my experience is similar to Jeremy's, they're not going to happen on their own. And it doesn't appear, at least our department and division didn't have a well-rehearsed process. So the proclamation was good. That got us out there, got us some visibility with the governor's office and with our own commissioner. But we also did some outreach. We had a very round figure for our budget for outreach. It was exactly 0. But we did what we could with that budget. We did our Twitter and Facebook posts. What we tried to do is we took the SepticSmart, on the SepticSmart webpage on the EPA site, there's some snippets like what's on the screen right here. What we did is we took those, we essentially put our own text over top of the bottom banner where that green bar is, put our logo on top of it, and pushed those out. We made a series of 6 of these similar to what you see, and we pushed those out. They were sized, they're a little bit blurry because they're sized for tweets and Facebook posts, so they're small, they're actually small images. But they went out, actually, when we looked at the analytics, it was some of the best click traffic we had on our social media posts for the whole year, which was good. Even our own media folks were kind of surprised that it got so many clicks. One of the things I tried to do kind of at the last minute, as I was driving in, I said, I wonder if DOT would let me put the, some sort of a catchy phrase on the highway signs coming in. And we have highway signs coming in and out of Anchorage and a couple going in and out of an area where we have a large degree of, or high concentration of on-site systems. Unfortunately, they said no. I couldn't use their signs for that purpose, but I tried. And one of the things we're going to try to do this year, but we don't have any information from last year, is how was there an increase in calls. We're going to try to engage now with our pumper community and see if we can kind of figure out if they see a peak or a spike in service calls after or during SepticSmart Week. So we look forward to that. So lessons learned, start early. We are probably going to start processing just after Memorial Day here and get going again on our proclamation for September. We have a feeling too, like Jeremy said, that once we get this process rehearsed and we say, look, all we're doing is the same thing we did last year and kind of attach a copy, we suspect this will go much smoother this year than it did last. But we want to get it done early and have the proclamation sitting as opposed to trying to get that last minute thing that we had to do this year. We are always on the lookout for free or low-cost engagement options like our social media. We also developed this year something new is our email listserv that we have, and folks that are subscribed to that are typically engineers, installers, pumpers, and we do have a few concerned realtors, things like that. So we hope to get it out on our listserv and generate a little bit of media. And that's how we also are going to try to get our feedback from our pumpers and see if we're seeing a spike. And last but not least, actually digging around in our archives, we found some old PSAs that are already professionally recorded, a little bit dated music, but they were probably made in the 90s sometime. But they have the same message that we want, so we're going to see if we can't get those out on the local radio and maybe TV news outlets if we can do a video or maybe a PSA story. One bit of advice, we got into it with our staff and kind of said, hey, we should, the message is, pump your tanks. We wanted it simple, but then we got into, well, maybe we can talk about, not using harsh cleansers. Well, okay, well, maybe we can talk about, not putting fats and, stuff down the tank, and maybe we can talk about not pumping out your tank, and it got big and it blossomed. It's like we've got tweets and we've got a Facebook post. Let's just keep it very, very simple to the one thing that we want them to do, which is call and have your septic system serviced. So we distilled that down even further to pump your tank, which is kind of what I was thinking of putting on the DOT boards if they would let me. But that was the lessons learned and some advice we had. But really just short and sweet, and we can answer questions at the end. But thanks for your time, and thanks for helping us out, too. We did get a lot of advice from folks that had done this before, so we were successful. But thank you.
All right, thank you, Gene. That was great. I just want to remind everyone that if you do have questions, you can type them in now, and we'll get to them at the end. So our final speaker of today is Susan Myhalo with the town of Ogden Dunes, Indiana. Susan, we're ready to go.
Okay, so now for something completely different. We are a very small town, and if we can do it, you can do it. So just to give you a little bit of context, the town of Ogden Dunes sits on the southern shore of Lake Michigan, and we are surrounded by the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore. And we have 1 mile of coastline approximately compared to the state of Alaska. We were incorporated in 1925, so you can well imagine we do have some homes that have some older septic systems. We have approximately 1,235 residents and 650 homes, and 100% of our homes are on septic systems. We have steep inclines and hills that would really make it difficult to put in sewer infrastructure. That doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it would be very costly, so I don't envision us switching over to sewer systems anytime in the near future. And I also wanted to note that people in our town assume that sand is great for septics, and we're recently learning that that is really not the case. And so that's going to be a whole new educational effort for our town in the future, letting people know that they can't make that assumption. So we have an evolution of awareness efforts over the last couple of years. The state, of course, regulates our septic systems, and then the county health department is who we work through to do permitting and things like that. And it's been a struggle for them to really get involved a lot in awareness and education. They're trying to do a lot more with tracking data, just knowing when permits are issued. I think our Porter County is doing a really good job with that, especially compared to some other nearby counties. But we felt that with the Ogden Dunes Environmental Advisory Board, we could do a lot better locally with our local residents. And so we've done a lot of work with our Ogden Dunes Environmental Advisory Board, of which I've chaired for a number of years now, toward education, but also we're doing more lately, hopefully, with some local ordinances, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. I thought it would also be important for you to know that Ogden Dunes, as you can see from this picture, is located adjacent to a highly industrialized area. And the Ogden Dunes Environmental Advisory Board was formed to advise the Town Council on how to deal with issues that emanate from industry, like a recent spill of chromium-6 into a nearby tributary to Lake Michigan. Our board is completely voluntary. We do have someone on our board, for instance, that's retired from the EPA lab in Chicago. My day job is to work for the Nature Conservancy. We have other people who have just skills that are very helpful to our efforts. So like I said, if we can do it on a voluntary basis, you can do it. But going back to the fact that we're located next to industry, we wanted to make sure that we walk the talk, that we weren't just complaining about industry next door, but that we weren't putting E. coli into the lake, and we were committing our best efforts toward maintaining our septic systems. Lake Michigan provides drinking water for more than 6 million people, and there is a critical intake for water that just sits on the west side of town, just off our shoreline, that serves a number of our communities for drinking water. I also wanted to let you know that we actively participate in the Septic System Working Group of the Lake Michigan Coastal Program, which has been extremely supportive of this, creating this awareness of septic systems, as well as Save the Dunes, which is a local nonprofit. They are doing a number of programs recently to help really take things to the next level. So instead of showing you septic systems, I'm hoping you can gain a greater appreciation of the area in which we live by looking at some of these slides and understand why we really want to support these efforts. The proclamation was not the be-all and end-all, of course. It's central to what we do. We have zero budget, however. So what are some things that we did? Well, first of all, we made sure that our town website is loaded with information on septic systems. And we try to let our residents know periodically that that information is there. We also provide information on the service companies that are registered to do business in our town. And we promote on the website, as you can see at the bottom, the EPA SepticSmart program. We have a Get Pumped banner that we put out the week of SepticSmart Week, and I wanted to mention that this was created prior to my my knowledge that there was a SepticSmart Week. So we weren't really able to incorporate the SepticSmart Week theme, but I think it works well. It's a simple message, and so I think we'll continue to use it. We have also posted the SepticSmart tips that EPA provides as JPEGs on our Facebook page. We actually have several Facebook pages in town that we just simply post them on, and it just takes a couple of minutes. It's very easy to do. And, I just wanted to mention that we did mention that we have a proclamation that we promote also on the Facebook page. We do several quizzes. A couple years ago we started doing this, and it's kind of fun. If you're trying to get various and sundry information out there about septic systems, the quizzes seem to have good response, and people enjoyed those. We also did a mailing in the water bill a couple of years ago, and we'll probably do it again in the near future if we can find some funding to print the mailing. Fortunately, because it's going in the water bill, and that's something we have to coordinate ahead of time, we can get it mailed for free to the residents. And like I said before, we did advertise our proclamation on the Facebook page, and it was also emailed to about 315 people that receive emails from our town about various activities and things going on in our town that want to be alerted about what's going on. So turning to the proclamation a little bit, we were encouraged to adopt this proclamation by the Lake Michigan Coastal Program Non-Point Source Program, and I didn't really find out about it until like the middle of the summer. So fortunately, the timing was still okay. We discussed it among the Ogden Dunes Environmental Advisory Board members at our August meeting, and then we sent it to the town clerk and the town council president for consideration and preparation for their September town council meeting. And it's always interesting when you come to a town council meeting and you want to talk about septics. You always get kind of a laugh in the audience. It's one of those topics that they, don't always really want to, hear about, but they know they have to hear about. So it was passed very easily with no question, very supported by the town council, and then we promoted it on the Facebook page for the town. One thing I had to do was, or one thing they had decided to do is they have to really change it into what's called a resolution in order for the town council to pass it. But it's pretty much the same thing. So again, as everybody else has said, make sure that you give yourself enough time to pass a proclamation or resolution through your local entity. The results aren't really totally quantifiable, and unfortunately, we're not able to get information on website visits for whatever reason that might have happened that week by promoting our website. But I have been told by our webmaster that we had like a 65% open rate on the emails, which we felt was pretty good, and we hope to see that increase in the future. I might check into with the person who maintains the Facebook page to find out what our view rate was on the Facebook page. That might be something to do in the future. And then another thing, a thought I have in the future is to write a letter to the editor about the SepticSmart Week and the proclamation of a local newspaper. We don't have a local newspaper here in Ogden Dunes. We have several regional newspapers, but we are the only community that is doing things with septic, so I think it would be appropriate to send that to them. And then as far as future endeavors, I think this is something that everyone can benefit from, and we forget about sometimes, is we would really like to find some way to do some social science research. Are we making a difference? Did people take action? And what did they learn from the SepticSmart Week? What are some key takeaways they had? And then, as I mentioned before, we are having some local movement on an ordinance. I just learned recently that our Plan Commission is drafting a point of sale ordinance, which is a great way to do something very locally that the state doesn't necessarily have to regulate. So there's going to have to probably be some good education with our residents in town as well as the realtors on the final point of sale ordinance. There is a county nearby, LaPorte County, that already has this, and I would like to probably learn. I probably will be talking to some people, to figure out how that is going for them. We also need to drive more traffic to our website. The information on the website is fairly static. We do try to look it over every year, but we do need to drive more people to the website, and we do try to do that during the SepticSmart Week especially. And I was actually thinking the other day that perhaps we could do, like you might have seen in some newsletters that nonprofits have, where there's some sort of hidden message somewhere on the website in the septic information on the website, and the first person who finds that hidden message wins a prize or something. Just to drive people there, and they'd have to read through the entire site to get to that hidden message, or most of the site. And then also the last thing we're doing coming up in a couple weeks is we are promoting septic awareness, among other things, at our Memorial Day picnic. We're going to have an Enviro tent with an Enviroscape where the kids will come and learn about the watersheds in our areas and what watersheds are all about. I don't know if the Enviroscape would have anything on about septic systems, but maybe there's a way we can incorporate that in. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it. So that's really all I have today. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Susan. And thank you to all the speakers for putting together these presentations. So we have a few questions that have come in here. The first question is from Jeremy Buchanan, and this is for all the speakers to answer, or any one of you three can answer. How would this campaign help with our efforts to comply with EPA requirements like MPDES and TMDLs?
I guess I could. This is Jeremy Simmons, Washington. I think it's a matter of just increasing water quality generally. You know, TMDLs are sort of more specific, at least in Washington, to municipal plants. You know, but if you have contamination of your surface water, of your streams and your rivers and so forth, and presumably some portion of it's coming from septic systems, and if you can get septic systems maintained better and so forth, then you know, it's sort of a circuitous path, I suppose. But the idea is to get the people to stop polluting by maintaining their systems a little better.
Yeah, this is Gene. I would echo Jeremy's sentiment. We don't have a strong tie, but one of the things I have been trying to do with my program is to work more closely with our non-point source program. And I have some ulterior motives for 319 funding, but that's kind of on hold for now until we see how things shake out. But I just think we have a separate non-point source program, and we're just trying to strengthen that tie of how this in general could help with these non-point source impaired waters, which Alaska has a handful. Again, our connection's not real strong right now, but I think it would be helpful in that respect too.
Okay, this next question is from Jennifer Thrush, and this is for Susan with Ogden Dunes. Jennifer wants to know, pertaining to information in the water bill mailing, do you have many residents on public water but who have a private septic system?
Yes, we are all on Indiana American Water, which is a public, which is the, I guess it's a private water system, but actually we're on, we obtain our water from Indiana American Water, and it's distributed to the Ogden Dunes Water Works. So that's how we're able to use the water bills, because it's all billed through our Ogden Dunes Water Work, our distribution system. Does that help?
I hope so. The next question, or it's more of a comment from Alyssa Rusicki. She's suggesting getting the pumpers to accept a $5 coupon and including that on the SepticSmart communications so that you can see how quantifiable the program is. Do any of you three have any comments on that?
I mean, yeah, that would be interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
We've talked about it, and I think, you know, the thing is, you know, what coupon would really move the needle for people to do something. It costs a couple of $100s to do their pumping. So is it $5? Is it $10? I mean, I don't know what the pumpers would accept.
Yeah, and for us, I guess what I was going to say, this is Jeremy from Washington State, that pumpers are regulated locally through counties, so we would have to figure out a way that that worked. You know, you would have to basically go through the locals. They would have to approve it or help us set up that system. It's a good idea. I kind of agree that maybe more than $5 would be needed.
This is Gene. In Alaska, the pumper industry is not regulated, so I don't have a great way to communicate with every pumper to get that word out and see if they participate. But it is a good thing to. I think it might inspire some pumpers to be more communicative with us and join our listserv to kind of get an idea of, hey, we could have this kind of a beneficial relationship here. You promote service calls, I'll give a small discount. I think the idea's got some merit. I just have to work with our pumpers that are voluntarily engaging with us.
All right, great. Our next question is from Paul Hamrick, and this is for Susan, again with Ogden Dunes. Does the town inspect and pump with a septic tank pumping fee for homes in the town, or do the homeowners need to provide any proof of pumping on the schedule?
No, as far as I know, the homeowners do not need to provide any proof of pumping. It really isn't incumbent upon the homeowner to do that. They do need to make sure that if they do any modifications, I believe, they need to make sure they get a permit from the county to do that, and that it's inspected. But as far as I know, for pumping, there's no notifications or anything required. It's interesting, I mean, and unfortunate. I mean, there are some people in our town who I think don't even know where their septic system is. We come across that periodically, and it's really a shame. So I wish there were more controls. It's just a matter of, how much can the county do?
All right, thanks, Susan. The next question is for Jeremy. How difficult was it to revise or adjust the message on the EPA materials? What software did you use?
Oh yeah, that was an interesting endeavor. Quick answer on the software. We use Adobe Illustrator, but most of EPA's materials are sort of, you can download them as a PDF or a JPEG, and so that was a problem. It took quite a bit of work. That's probably where the most sort of person hours came in, was manipulating those. And I've made suggestions to EPA that they provide some templates or base documents in PDF and in Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator seems to be a pretty universal format that most graphic artists can plug into and use. Luckily, we had someone here in our office that's very good with Adobe Illustrator and made quick work of it, and so that went really well. But it is a problem.
Thanks, Jeremy. And at EPA, we are going to be working on making templates more readily available for you to change and put your local information on. Also, just to mention that the templates for all of the governor proclamations are on our website as well on epa.gov/septic. So our last question here, I know we have two more. This question is for Jeremy or Jean. From Dan, he says, I am new to the public sector, specifically at the state level. What is the benefit of requesting a proclamation from the governor? Why not try to perform outreach without a proclamation?
Well, this is Gene. That's a good question. The proclamation does get posted on the governor's webpage, and they do get replicated on other websites, so it does give you a little bit of, let's just call it free exposure in places where maybe you wouldn't previously. It also adds a little bit of gravity behind the event that the governor has made a proclamation. But there's, I mean, quite honestly, there's lots of proclamations about various things. So it just lets you compete with those things like, certain awareness weeks, whatever. I think it lets you compete and gets you similar exposure.
Yeah, I think that's right what Gene said. This is Jeremy. I would, I guess, say it's not an either or in my mind. It's all of the above. And a proclamation is, a low cost way to compete with other messages that are out there. But if you want to have an effective public education campaign, you kind of have to push all of your tools out as far as you can. I think for a while websites were the go-to place. A lot of younger folks that I know don't even go to agency websites unless they see something on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And when they come across that little news feed on Twitter or Facebook, they might end up at an agency website. They're usually too wordy and sort of, not very fun, those websites. So a quick splash that says the governor said this is a good idea and there's a tweet on it, it seems to be the right size message for a lot of our audience.
Yeah, I think the proclamation makes it newsworthy. It gives you something newsworthy.
Okay, our next question here is, did any local environmental nonprofits take advantage of SepticSmart Week and join your government efforts? Do you think this proclamation initiative could come from an NGO as opposed to a state or county department? And this is for everyone to answer.
Yeah, this is Susan. We're very fortunate to have an organization called Save the Dunes, and they received funding recently from the Lake Michigan Coastal Program to actually build an awareness campaign and work with the various communities. So that is definitely a case where that happened. We also, prior to that, had the Urban Waters Initiative, and they're still focused on it as well. So we have several entities there and that are, concerned about septic systems here.
Okay, this next question, I guess I'll answer this question. It says, is there any funding available through EPA to help with outreach programs? So we don't provide funding directly for outreach programs, but we create these materials so that we can disseminate them down to the local and state levels so that they can help promote the materials through basically what you've seen in this presentation, through the government proclamations, through these webinars, and through the tweets and other social media. This next question is, how does the Washington Health Department, so this one's for Jeremy, fund their outreach activities that were mentioned in the webcast?
Yeah, great question. So I alluded to it, it was federal dollars. There's a program called the National Estuaries Program, specific to places with estuaries, that we've been very fortunate to fund lots of cool programs out of, whether or not that's shoreline surveys or, septic system awareness campaigns in other forms. And so I applied for one of these. They're kind of like grants, and I applied for one of those and got that last year. Those dollars have dried up significantly this year, so we won't be getting any dollars like that for 2017. And so I don't expect to be doing any outdoor placements. We'll probably focus mostly on social media and maybe try to do some events and so forth. But on funding, I would say if you can find a grant that's specific to education for water quality or for rural, sometimes if you look in the sort of the rural grants, there can be stuff on septic systems, but it's not easy.
Okay, this next question is from Lori Cameron. She's asking, was there any evidence of coliform beach contamination in the vicinity of Ogden Dunes that might motivate folks to pay attention to septic runoff?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. We've had no way to really trace back whether or not any E. coli issues on our beach are related to our septic systems. It would be a variety of sources because we have a tributary nearby called Burns Waterway that drains 331 square miles as a watershed, and it has several sanitary districts that have outfalls on it that either have sanitary system overflows or combined sewer overflows periodically. That does seem to be getting better. We do participate in EPA's beach program where we receive funding from the Indiana Department of Environmental Management to monitor our beach every year. And it's always been, I've always been curious, whether or not, any of our exceedances, which are actually getting better, are being caused by septic systems. But it's just one of those things. I'm not sure how it'd be tracked back because it comes from a variety of sources.
Okay, and our last question is from Larry, who, this is for everyone. He's asking, have any state farm bureaus been engaged in this effort?
Not that I know of. This is Jeremy from Washington.
Not from Alaska.
Yeah, not from, but it's a good thought to think about.
All right, well, that concludes our webinar. We have no other questions, so if you have more questions, feel free to contact myself or any of the presenters. You'll have their contact info. The slides and this webinar will be posted online. I just wanted to thank everyone again for attending this webinar, and we're looking forward to SepticSmart Week 2017, which is September 18th to 22nd. So thank you, and have a great rest of your day.